Beauty and Destruction in the Work of Sam Shepard, A Theatrical Collision by Jill Szoo Wilson. www.jillsoowilson.com. Introduction. In the plays of Sam Shepard, beauty and destruction are not opposing forces so much as interdependent elements continually coexisting, colliding, and reconstituting one another. His characters, often broken men in desolate landscapes or fraying domestic spaces, search for transcendence but are tethered to the ruins of family, memory, and myth. This essay explores Shepard's use of beauty and destruction as thematic counterpoints and mutually generative forces in works such as Buried Child, 1978, True West, 1980, and Fool for Love, 1983. In Buried Child, a child's corpse buried in the backyard serves as a symbol of familial disintegration that resurfaces through surreal harvests. In True West, the kitchen becomes a battleground where toast and typewriters fly. And in Fool for Love, the rhythm of two doomed lovers is rendered audible through physical contact with a set built from drum skin. Each play demands intense physical and emotional presence, and together they form a trilogy of destruction drawn in poetry, silence, and sound. This essay considers the structural and performative demands these themes place on both text and actor. In contrast to playwrights who treat destruction as a moral end or beauty as a redemptive balm, Shepard constructs a theatrical world in which the two often co-occur. In Shepard's work, we see raw violence framed in lyricism and spiritual longing undercut by physical collapse. His stage directions read like prose poems. His dialogue pulses with the tension of characters reaching for something sublime while pulling the trigger on their own undoing. This paradox resonates deeply with the teachings of Sanford Meisner, who insisted that, quote, acting is the ability to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances, end quote. In Shepard's imaginary worlds, the truth is frequently unbearable and, at the same time, luminous. Destruction as Inheritance, Buried Child. In Buried Child, Shepard excavates the American family mythos, exposing its rotted core beneath the pastoral iconography of the Midwest. The play opens with Dodge, an alcoholic patriarch, coughing on a couch while rain lashes the windows of his decaying farmhouse. The setting is already decomposing. Destruction is not merely happening, it has happened, and its aftermath persists like mold on the American dream. What makes this destruction poetic rather than gratuitous is Shepard's language. Dodge's sardonic wit and Tilden's fractured monologues evoke a kind of haunted beauty. When Tilden carries in freshly harvested corn and carrots, impossibly from land long presumed fallow, the vegetables function as both an eerie miracle and a symbol of buried truth. The farm yields again, but only as a sign that the past cannot stay buried. This return of growth serves as a central metaphor in the play. The truth, once buried, has taken root. It now pushes upward in ways the characters cannot fully comprehend or control. The new growth is ambiguous, both miraculous and monstrous, both a sign of life and a symptom of rot. As the character Shelley remarks, quote, "You can't force a thing to grow," end quote. Her observation, offered with both innocence and frustration, frames one of the play's central tensions: the futility of control. What has been buried, especially when traumatic or unacknowledged, does not remain dormant. It germinates in silence, demanding recognition. The corn and carrots become emblems of this paradox in that the land produces life not in celebration, but in indictment. The soil remembers. As acting theorist Uta Hagen writes in Respect for Acting, quote, "The objective must always be rooted in the truth of the moment, however elusive that truth may be," end quote. In Buried Child, the actor's task is to embody emotional disorientation within a physical world that no longer obeys rational laws. The character's denial of the unspeakable crime, an incestuous child murdered and buried in the backyard, structures their entire relational dynamic, making truth both the threat and the only possible redemption. Destruction in this play is not explosive, but ambient. It lingers, infects, and ultimately demands to be unearthed. When Dodge mutters, "He's not dead, he's lying out there in the rain," or when Tilden brings in armfuls of crops and states flatly, I picked it all," the audience begins to grasp the scale of denial wrapped in ritual and decay. The crime at the heart of the family has not simply been buried, it has become atmospheric, altering everything it touches. Beauty on the brink, True West. If Buried Child presents destruction as something buried within the familial structure, True West stages it as a volatile performance, immediate, escalating, and bound by an unstable intimacy. The play centers on two estranged brothers, Austin and Lee, whose identities slowly collapse into one another in a taut, absurdist spiral. Their interactions shift from passive aggression to full-blown physical chaos, culminating in a nearly feral regression. What emerges, paradoxically, is a strange kind of beauty, a dark symmetry between the brothers, a primal dance of dominance and dependence. Their chaotic exchanges echo Meisner's call for emotional truth. Quote, "Don't do anything until something happens to make you do it," end quote. Every gesture in True West is reactive, impulsive, and dangerously real. The play becomes a study in what happens when actors are fully present within characters who are fully unraveling. In one of the play's quieter yet more hauntingly resonant moments, Austin asks his mother if he can take some of her china with him into the desert. The request, almost absurd given the play's building chaos, reflects a deeply human impulse to carry something civil, refined, and domestic into a wild and untamed place. It is a moment of tragic tenderness. Austin, whose identity has begun to dissolve under the pressure of his brother's presence and the unraveling of his life, tries to hold on to something emblematic of order. The china becomes an anchor, a symbolic plea for beauty in a world rapidly losing form. But the attempt to impose civility on chaos is ultimately futile. This desire to preserve the daily rituals of safety, represented by dishes, meals, and domestic customs, is swallowed by the very wilderness he is stepping into. The destruction of the daily order becomes, paradoxically, an act of liberation, a refusal to replicate the emotional sterility and performative masculinity modeled by their father. Their unraveling, though chaotic, is also an act of anti-inheritance. It's a way of rejecting the rigid, lifeless structures passed down to them. In destroying the structure, the brothers reach, however destructively, for something that might be more authentic. Their final confrontation, circling each other with cords and toasters, lit in a harsh wash of kitchen light, culminates not in resolution, but in a mutual snarl of recognition. As the lights go down, they are frozen, both caught in mirrored stances, each a grotesque reflection of the other. The beauty here is not in their harmony, but in the stark exposure of their inherited chaos. It is the raw, unvarnished honesty of the moment, the shedding of illusion, the physical embodiment of the emotional lineage they have both tried to escape, that becomes beautiful. In seeing themselves reflected in each other's ruin, they finally confront the truth that has been simmering beneath the surface all along. The symmetry is terrible, but it is real. In Shepard's world, reality, no matter how brutal, carries its own strange and terrible grace. Shepard writes the destruction of these men with startling elegance. Their violence is framed in precise stage directions and taut, almost musical dialogue. Beauty resides not in the content of their actions, but in the way the play choreographs collapse with clarity and control. The kitchen, once a place of order and domesticity, becomes the site of total disorder. Toast burns, typewriters smash, and identities merge. And yet, in this implosion, Shepard captures something elemental. the deep, even mythic pull towards self-annihilation in the search for meaning. Desire on the Edge of Ruin, Fool for Love. In Fool for Love, Shepard explores the entanglement of beauty and destruction through the lens of obsessive love. The play unfolds in a Mojave motel room where May and Eddie, bound by shared history and irrevocable desire, attempt to extricate themselves from a relationship that has long since passed the point of salvation. Their love is violent, cyclical, and relentless, a collision of longing and despair. Here, destruction takes the shape of repetition. Eddie leaves, returns, makes promises, and breaks them. May pulls away, only to be drawn back in. Their intimacy is a closed circuit, sparking and sparking but never resolving. The presence of Martin, a well-meaning outsider, introduces a strategic third element, used by May to re-establish her autonomy and disrupt the intensity between herself and Eddie. Martin becomes a foil, not only to Eddie, but to the rhythm of the couple's collapse. He functions less as a romantic rival and more as a symbol of distance, a grasp at sanity, and an invitation to something less volatile. In Martin's calm and steadiness, Eddie's chaos becomes unmistakable, and for a moment, May can see it for what it is and see herself as someone who might choose differently. In one unforgettable scene, Martin asks simple questions about Eddie, about the past, but is met with silence or deflection. He becomes a quiet observer, watching the frayed edges of a relationship he cannot fully comprehend. When Eddie returns with rope and a motel bedpost in mind, Martin shifts from passive guest to unwitting witness, positioned just outside the emotional violence unfolding before him. His bafflement mirrors the audience's own, offering a point of contrast. Where Eddie and May are entangled in a closed circuit of obsession, Martin represents the rational world. He is detached, orderly, and unprepared for the depth of their volatility. In this way, Martin's presence underscores the gulf between emotional entrapment and emotional clarity. The language of the play is undeniably beautiful. Shepard allows lyricism to rise through the violence, crafting lines that vibrate with poetic realism. In the original production, that lyricism was made visceral through sound. The set design included walls made of stretched drum material, allowing the actors to fall against, roll against, and hit the surfaces. Their bodies created percussion with each physical interaction, resonating audibly in the space. In one key moment, May launches herself against the wall in anguish, and the reverberation stuns both the audience and her scene partner, making the violence not just visible, but visceral. The drum-like resonance blurs the line between acting and underscoring, allowing the architecture itself to speak the unspeakable. The walls held their pain, amplified their pulses, and gave form to the emotional choreography that defined their bond. In this way, the set itself became an instrument, conducting the music of destruction. Uta Hagen reminds us that, quote, "The best performances are those in which the actor ceases to act and begins to live," end quote. Fool for Love demands exactly that. The actors must inhabit emotional extremes without ever veering into melodrama. They must make devastation look inevitable, but never rehearsed. It is step by step that Eddie and May unravel. The characters are not caricatures of dysfunction. They are portraits of the human impulse to chase beauty, love, even when it leads to ruin. Conclusion. In Shepard's theatrical universe, beauty is never pristine, and destruction is rarely complete. The two are fused in an uneasy duet, with one rising through the other, undoing and remaking what came before. His characters do not simply live in the aftermath of chaos. They create it, inherit it, resist it, and remake themselves through it. They destroy what they love in the same breath that they reach for transcendence. Truth in this world is not a final destination, but something that emerges only through rupture and rebirth. For actors, Shepard's work is both an invitation and a crucible. It demands presence without pretense, risk without rehearsal, and emotional exposure without easy catharsis. As Sanford Meisner reminds us, the actor's task is to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances, and in Shepard's plays, those circumstances are often brutal. The performer must inhabit contradictions so fully that they cease to be contradictions and become character. For audiences, the reward is a visceral encounter with the kind of upheaval that often defines real life, rendered before them with clarity, immediacy, and form. Shepard's plays are not about fixing what's broken. They are about what is revealed when the breaking is allowed to speak. For more theater essays, literary criticism, and original writing by Jill Szoo Wilson, visit jillsoowilson.com.